Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Epic Medical Education and Discussion Series has invited one of our prominent neurologists in the community, Dr. Anwar al-Haq, to talk a little bit about respecting the neurologic needs of our elders. So he is going to begin talking now, and inshallah we invite people to come forward and sit nearby and also ask a lot of questions. This is not just educational but a discussion series, so inshallah you'll learn something, and I'm just going to go ahead and introduce Dr. Haq.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Some of the brothers are still praying, so if you just bear with me for a couple of more minutes, we'll inshallah let them finish, and then we will start talking about this topic. So inshallah we will start. My name is Anwar al-Haq. I'm a neurologist here in Dallas, and I've been a neurologist here for over 23 years. I just want to talk to all of you, whether you are a senior or you have someone in your family who is a senior. And in fact, what I'm going to talk about is relevant to anyone who is, whether they are senior or junior, because really there is no clear line of demarcation for neurological problems out in the community, a line that divides by age. So really it's relevant for everyone. And it's really not a lecture. What I would appreciate is that as we go along and I discuss some of the things, that it generates some questions in your minds and you ask those questions. That is the whole purpose. It is not a monologue over here. So neurological diseases are very common, and awareness about them, unfortunately, is not that prevalent. Our understanding of the nervous system and how it works and what happens when it stops working is not very impressive. The nervous system and the diseases that are produced within the nervous system, they constitute about 15% of all the diseases that mankind has. And this is a huge disease burden, something that one cannot neglect. Briefly, the nervous system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, this is the master organ of the body. The whole body works to keep it alive. If the brain is dead, the man is dead. So the heart pumps the blood to make sure that brain gets enough blood supply. The lungs, they breathe air to make sure that blood has enough oxygen that would eventually go to the brain and keep it alive. The kidneys work to make our system clean so that all the toxins in the body are eliminated and brain doesn't get affected by those toxins, and so on and so forth. So what is our nervous system? It comprises of the brain that is contained within our head, and the spinal cord, which starts at the bottom of the brain and continues throughout our vertebral column or the backbone. And from there are a number of nerves that come out of our spinal cord, and they go to the rest of the body, in which, like the electrical wiring, and those electrical wires, they connect every part of the body to the brain. That is how the control network of the body is established, and the brain becomes the organ that controls the entire body. So the brain is not a huge organ. It weighs only 3 pounds. Yet it has billions of cells. It is the most amazing creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We still understand only a fraction of how it works. But unfortunately, we have out of that fraction that is known, our knowledge, meaning out in the community, is still very minimal. So the brain, the spinal cord, which is shown over here, that is coming down from the brain through our vertebral column, and the nerves as they come out. I've just shown it just to give an idea. This is what comprises our nervous system. What I want to do is just introduce some of the key symptoms by which neurological disorders or dysfunction of the nervous system presents. Meaning, what are the symptoms? What happens? What would one of us, if, may Allah forbid, were to be afflicted by a neurological problem, what are the signs? We know if you get chest pain, well, the first thing that comes to mind is, do I have a problem with the heart? If your pulse is too fast, the same happens. If you can't breathe, you think about your lungs. So similarly, what are the symptoms that will tell you that the nervous system is probably the seat of the problem, and also to get an idea of the severity of the problem and what to do about it. I'm not going to discuss any individual diseases, but you are all very welcome to ask me any questions about any of the problems. So one of the most common problems related to the nervous system is dizziness. We feel dizzy. We hear a lot about it. Women in the house complain, I'm feeling dizzy. Men complain. In fact, it is one of the most common symptoms with which patient presents to a neurologist or even to a primary care physician. And there is no clear-cut definition of what dizziness is. Everyone's definition of dizziness is slightly different. Some describe it as being lightheaded. The head that we carry doesn't feel as heavy. It feels as if it is floating in air. There are others who feel that they are losing their balance. They don't fall, yet all the time or acutely for a short period of time, they feel that they are going to lose balance and fall down. Yet others have a more severe symptom, mostly that happens suddenly, comes on suddenly, which is the spinning of everything around you, what medically is termed vertigo, where all of a sudden you start feeling everything around you, including the room, it starts spinning. And you feel very sick to your stomach. You feel deathly ill with it. You can't stand, you can't walk, you can't do anything. So these are different descriptions of dizziness. So this is one symptom, and there are a number of causes. If you have developed dizziness that came on suddenly, then it is definitely a symptom that you would want to discuss with your care provider, with at least your primary care physician. It is not a symptom. If dizziness has been going on for a long period of time, weeks, months, then it isn't that important. It's important to resolve, but the underlying mechanisms are not, if I may say, dangerous. Anxiety is a common cause of this persistent dizziness that one has for weeks and months. And there are some other causes. So dizziness is one symptom. You can feel free to stop me and ask any questions. I'll be very happy to answer that. Weakness is another. Sometimes we complain of generalized weakness. We feel weak all the time. It has a lot of causes. If we feel depressed, you feel unwell, we feel generally weak. Sometimes generalized weakness comes on very suddenly. So that is something very important. You wouldn't want to miss that. You would want to discuss it with your doctors. Sometimes the weakness affects only part of the body. So suddenly one arm, one leg, one side of the body becomes weak. That is a very alarming symptom. That indicates something like a stroke. That is the first thing that should come to your mind. And I think you're going to have a talk about stroke in detail as well. But briefly, stroke is now considered something that is treatable. The most common type of stroke is treatable, and time is of essence. Do not delay your care. Do not delay calling 911 or asking someone to take you to the emergency room, because there is a very narrow time window where, when the weakness starts, from that point to 4.5 hours is the critical time. During that time, there is a medicine that can reverse the stroke, potentially reverse the stroke. So that is of great importance. Similarly, you can have weakness that comes on very gradually and starts affecting either one arm, one leg, or both legs or both arms. Again, this is a very important symptom. Do not ignore it. If you have weakness which comes on and gradually keeps on getting worse, that needs attention by your physician. Losing balance, and here I do not mean dizziness. What I mean is that you don't feel dizzy. You're clear-headed. There is no lightheadedness. The room's not spinning. Yet, when you try to walk, when you try to do something, you keep on either falling or you swerve to one side and you cannot walk straight. Or when you try to use your arms, they move from side to side. This type of loss of balance also indicates that the nervous system, certain part of the nervous system, is not working properly. Forgetfulness. Students complain about it all the time, but that is subjective. We all, when we were taking our tests, the morning of the test, we always thought that we forgot everything. We can't remember anything. But that is different. But this is the forgetfulness which comes on later in life, and we have difficulty recalling names, recalling recent events, recalling certain things that we previously knew very clearly. This is the type of loss of memory or forgetfulness that I'm talking about. One simple rule of the thumb to try and differentiate whether this is something to be concerned with or this is something which is part of getting older. Because as we get older, obviously, the body changes. That's the natural evolution of human body. You know, when we are 25, we are able to run very fast. When we are 65, we cannot run that fast. You know, the joints never ached no matter what we did when we were 20, but when we are 80, they keep on aching no matter what we do with them. So that's the natural evolution of human life and human body. So is the case with our memory. Memory declines with age. It's not a sign of disease, it's a sign of aging. And there is very little other than a few things that I'll discuss in the end that we can do about it. But our communities are afflicted by specific diseases that impair memory. And that is what is most concerning. Conditions like Alzheimer's disease, which is a degenerative disease of the brain, meaning the brain cells, they start dying left and right, and we lose our memory. Towards the end of it, we can't even recall our own name, recognize our own children, or our spouses. That is the forgetfulness that is most concerning. How do we differentiate? Rule of thumb is that if your impaired memory or forgetfulness starts impacting your life, do become concerned. For example, you forgot where you put the keys. You forgot, you went to the masjid, you came out, you never had difficulty finding where your car was, how to drive back to the house, and now you are having difficulty, you have become disoriented, you cannot remember your way back to the house. That is the forgetfulness that one needs to be concerned about. And not just me and you, elders in the family, if they have complaints like this, you need to be concerned, and you should take them to see a neurologist or at least their own primary care physicians. Headache. Headache is a very common problem, but headache usually affects, significant severe headache usually affects younger people. Headache, when it starts for the first time in someone who is over the age of 50, is always a cause of concern. If someone had headaches all their lives, it got better when they were 40, and it came back again when they were 60, it might be less important. But someone who never had headache as a problem in their life, and then they start getting headache over the age of 50, 60, 70, that is a reason for concern. That definitely needs to have some medical attention paid to it. Losing consciousness, what we call blacking out. Again, a very important symptom. You cannot, primarily we lose consciousness. We have consciousness because of the brain. The brain is the object in the body that provides us consciousness. When someone loses consciousness, it means that the brain is not working. It can have a number of causes. So whether someone is young or very old, having a seizure is a common cause of losing consciousness. And seizure does not always mean a big convulsion where the whole body is jerking. Seizures, they come in many different forms and can affect the brain where the brain stops working. So do not ignore that symptom. There are many other causes. The brain doesn't get blood supply, for example. The heart might be the source. If heart rate becomes very rapid or very irregular, or the heart contractions become inefficient, the brain doesn't get the blood supply that it needs, doesn't get the oxygen that it needs, and therefore it leads to a blackout or losing of consciousness. So losing consciousness is always a very important symptom. Another very important symptom is backache, both in the young as well as in the elderly, in men as well as in one of the most common symptoms that brings a person to their physician or to the neurologist. You can have back pain that comes on acutely, like you picked up something, you bend down to pick up your child. By the time you straighten your back, you couldn't do anything. You stopped breathing because it was so painful. And that usually indicates that there is a slip disc that is pushing onto a nerve. The other telltale sign of that is that it's not just your back that starts hurting, but the pain starts shooting down your leg, because the nerve that goes down into the leg is compressed by that disc that has moved from its place. The same can actually happen with your upper back, especially your neck and lower part of the neck, where the pain then radiates into the arms and not just down your back or your leg. Tremor or shaking is another common symptom that we see. It needs medical attention. The most common type of shaking is very benign in its nature, meaning that there is no underlying sinister or dangerous disease process. It's called benign essential tremor. It runs in families. So if you have a family history of similar shaking, then that's probably the cause. But what we usually are most concerned about this shaking is whether this is something like Parkinson's disease, which I'm sure that a lot of you have heard about, which is a progressive disease which eventually becomes very disabling and definitely needs the attention and the treatment. There are many other illnesses that can impact the nervous system, the most important of which I have put down over here, which are also very common. High blood pressure, if uncontrolled, if not properly monitored, if ignored, leads to not only heart attacks but strokes, one of the most common underlying causes of stroke. Diabetes, rampant in our community, with the type of diet that we use, the poorly controlled weight that we have, especially the type of diet which contains refined sugar out of proportion to everything else, which unfortunately in all the Asian and Middle Eastern food, that seems to be the case. Therefore, diabetes is very common. And when diabetes is common, it affects our nervous system because it starts affecting the blood flow to the brain. It also predisposes us to having strokes. High cholesterol, again, is a problem that leads to similar issues. So, what are we going to do about it? Other than seeking medical help, that will, if you have any of those symptoms, can we do something? Because prevention is the best form of treatment. So what can we do? There are a number of things that we can do, that some of them I put down over here, that overall we need to have a healthy lifestyle. What is a healthy lifestyle? It is a balanced lifestyle. Where we have healthy habits, not unhealthy habits, such as no smoking, such as controlling our weight, such as having a diet that contains fresh fruits and vegetables, a diet that is low in carbohydrate, especially what are called refined sugars, and a diet that has enough protein and enough fat in it. It also means that we exercise, and exercise definitely does not entail going to the gym. If you go to the gym, that is fine, you know. No offense intended to the younger people who love going to the gym, but to stay healthy, you don't have to go to the gym. If you walk briskly, 30 minutes in a day, 3 to 4 days a week, that is good enough. That is good enough exercise, and you control rest of the things, and you monitor your blood pressure, you have a healthy diet that does not lead to skyrocketing cholesterol level or blood sugar, then that is good enough for you. So these are the steps that you need to do that will lead to a healthy lifestyle. You know, especially if you know how to relax. Sometimes we don't know how to relax, and there are a number of ways of trying to learn to relax, and remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, coming to Fajr, sleeping early after Isha, waking up early, and so on and so forth. These are all very good habits that clearly help our physical health as well as our spiritual health. So all of these, if you are able to regulate and discipline yourself, this is what is a healthy lifestyle. This is the best thing that you can do. And again, if you have any symptom of neurological disorder, do not ignore it. Do not dismiss it. Do not delay seeking medical advice. So that is all I had to say, and I'll be very happy to answer any questions. Yes? That is the refined sugar. So refined sugars are as opposed to complex sugars that occur naturally. For example, sugar that is in fresh fruits and vegetables, that is a complex sugar. The refined sugar is the starchy flour that we use for making pasta and bread and the rice that we eat all the time. Those are all forms of refined sugar. And that is the source of the problem. Yes?
How about rice?
Rice?
Biryani.
It's good.
Biryani is very good, I tell you that. But yes, rice, yes, definitely. Rice is pure sugar. So, sorry to disappoint, but it is sugar, and it is a big problem. So the rice that you eat, there is very little difference between a spoonful of rice and a spoonful of sugar. That is what you are feeding yourself.
In moderation. Everything in moderation.
Yes, and depending on whether someone has diabetes or not, it has to be. So I'm not saying that you cannot eat any of those, or you cannot have a piece of bread or a spoonful of rice. But frankly speaking, when rice is in the form of biryani, no one stops at a spoonful. Yes?
How about wheat bread and brown rice?
Yeah, they are better, definitely, yes.
What about honey and dates?
Oh, where did that come from? Oh, honey and dates. Okay, yeah. So dates are good, but again, Dr. Osman said in moderation. And honey, of course, you know, who can argue about honey? But it doesn't mean that you should have a bottle of honey every day, especially if you are diabetic. You know, that's sugar, but yes, honey is very good to use. If you are using small amount of honey every day, that is good.
Assalamu alaikum. In between wheat and quinoa and all those grains, which is better and in what quantity?
So, as I said, you know, if it is not the husk is still there, and if it is brown wheat, that is much better because it is bulky for the body. It still has the good parts of it, that it is not refined. You know, most of the problem comes with when all of that is broken down and it's refined. Everything from the covering is removed, and from inside all you have is pure starch. If that is what you are using, then that is bad. But again, as I said, in moderation. It doesn't mean, you know, like you can have, but brown bread definitely is better. But here brown means whole wheat. It doesn't mean brown color added to the bread. Yes. 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 Migraine headache? Yes. So migraine headache is a very common problem. There are 18, just in the US, 18 million Americans suffer from significant migraines. Women suffer from it 3 times more than men. So there are 12 million women and 6 million men who suffer from migraine. It is the episodic severe headache that many of us recognize, but migraine has a very broad definition, the way it is defined by the International Headache Society. So any headache that is severe enough to impair your life, you need to go and see your doctor. And the likelihood is that in more than 95% of cases, it is going to turn out to be a form of migraine. Just because it is so common, you know, as they say, common things are common. Migraine is common, that is what it is going to turn out to be. So, you know, if someone in your family suffers from it, I happen also to be the director of the Baylor Headache Center in Dallas. So that's one of the areas I specialize in. So you're very welcome to come, and we'll be happy to take care of it.
I have ocular migraine. The migraine that affects the vision.
So the current day term for that type of migraine, what is sometimes called the ocular migraine.
Can you repeat
Okay, he said that he suffers from ocular migraine where you lose vision. So I was just trying to say that the current terminology that we use is migraine with aura. That is where you either lose vision temporarily, or you start seeing wavy lines, distorted images, black spots, bright stars, and a number of other things. Where it usually comes, it lasts less than 60 minutes, usually about 20 to 30 minutes, and either while you are having that episode, the headache comes on, or it comes on afterwards. And it's a severe headache. So it's very treatable. Yeah, it's very treatable. You suffer from it?
For the last 25 years.
Oh my goodness. So I'm 25 years late in talking to you, it seems. So, no, it's very treatable. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
She had diabetes
Yes.
And she complains of hot flush
Uh-huh.
things. Is there a treatment for that?
Yes. So
We give
that,
her, since long, vitamin B1, B6, B12,
Right.
microbiome, these things. Yeah.
right. Right. So diabetes and complications of diabetes. Diabetes is a disease that affects every part of the body. Every part of the body eventually gets affected, especially if diabetes is uncontrolled. It affects vision, your blood pressure, your kidneys, your blood vessels, stroke, heart attacks, you name it. And one of the things that diabetes does is that it starts affecting your nerves, and it produces what is called a diabetic neuropathy. And in most instances, it can produce weakness because of that, but it is a painful neuropathy. You develop numbness, tingling, burning. It's very uncomfortable. So vitamins usually do not help. I know that they are widely used, but they are used most out of hope rather than any evidence that they help. So there are treatment that can be, there are a number of medications, number of trials have been done, and they have been shown to help the pain of diabetic neuropathy. The only thing that once it happens, it's unfortunately irreversible. So nothing reverses it, but you can slow the progression or worsening of neuropathy if you tightly control diabetes.
And
Yes.
I also just wanted to add that diabetes is a good example of how physical health and mental health can be very linked. They're not artificially divided. Diabetes can, just like heart attacks, can cause depression, and depression can actually worsen diabetes.
Yes.
So that's just one thing I wanted to mention, that when you think about health, we ought not to think about physical versus mental, just kind of your whole health. Sometimes you have mental symptoms related to neurologic conditions as well.
Sure.
And then can we go to the next question?
Yes. Yes.
My question is, memorizing, let's say, parts of Quran. Have you seen any link? It helps, stronger nervous systems.
Well, I don't think anyone has done any study to show that, but people who engage in mental activities of any type, even playing, what's that called, Sudoku, they or doing crossword on a regular basis, in trying to solve mathematical problems, or engaging in other intellectual activities, they are less likely to develop Alzheimer's or forgetfulness. So I guess that would be true even for those who memorize the Quran and read, and they continue to read all of that.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yes.
I do have a question.
Sorry.
Thanks for coming, and thanks for all the
Yeah.
good information you're sharing with us. For myself, I had a question about the fact that matter is I am a diabetic patient. I've stopped my medication completely about a year ago. I have to control over my life in terms of the diet and regular walking and casual exercise. Plus, I'm also using some natural remedies early in the morning that I drink. I've stopped all medication, my diabetic pills, my blood pressure, cholesterol. I don't take anything. And I get myself checked regularly by the doctor. Everything is under control. My A1C was 6.9. It was a little high, but the doctor said that you still don't have to start your medication at this point of time. My question to you is in terms of the artificial sugar. I keep hearing the Splenda or any of the Nutricerts or even the green stuff that came out, the stevia, they have negative impact on neurological, to create neurological disorder. Is that a fact? Is it proven, or is this a statement?
So, we use artificial sweeteners thinking that the real sugar will lead to weight gain, and if we take dyed drinks, artificial sugars, just to sweeten everything, that we will become healthier. Okay, that is not the case. No one has ever shown that people who drink dyed drinks are losing weight or get any healthier than that. In fact, the body, the brain, has a way of taking revenge, because when we have a sweet Diet Coke, we are deceiving the brain. We are taking something sweet. The brain thinks this is sweet, and yes, we say, I got it. You know, I deceived it. I have the taste, and yet there is no calorie in it. The brain doesn't look at it that way. The brain still thinks that it is sweet. Therefore, it gives the message that sugar has been consumed. And the message to the pancreas, from where insulin comes, that pancreas secretes the amount of insulin which it would have for that kind of sweetness. And when that insulin enters our bloodstream, it leads to lowering of our sugar. When the sugar is lowered, we start feeling hungry. And we eat because we are so hungry. Okay? And you know, if you cannot control your desire and temptation for a sweet drink, how will you ever control the desire and temptation to eat when you are hungry? So no one loses weight because of using diet. So I fully agree. There's a lot of debate whether some of these, when used on a regular basis, whether they produce cancer or not, and so I don't know. I've not looked into it as to what the evidence is for that, whether they are. But generally speaking, it's hard to believe that if there is proof for a commonly used substance to be carcinogenic or producing cancer, that FDA would not regulate it. But that can happen. Yes. Sorry, I hear to ask. Yes.
Can you explain more about losing consciousness and how it's related to seizure, especially in early age, and then cured seizure?
Okay, so seizures are common. You know, seizures occur because of sudden surge of electricity in the brain, and that affects the brain in such a way that the part of the brain that keeps us conscious and awake, it is paralyzed, and therefore we lose consciousness. That is what seizure is. So there are two peaks of, you know, if you look at any community, age-wise, there are two peaks for seizures, meaning that they occur commonly. One is in early infancy and childhood, and then the incidence goes down, and the second peak comes after age 60 to 65, later in life. But those two are seizures, but very different type of seizures.
Is losing consciousness after years from pure seizure is part of seizure?
Yes, it can be. That's what needs. Without seizure, it can be. Seizures are of many different types. As I said, one is that convulsion that we all know someone is having a seizure. But seizure can have many different forms. You can have jerking of one part of the body, and you can have no jerking at all, just losing consciousness, falling down, and sometimes just confusion without anything else. It can also be a seizure. Yes.
Ella, we're going to have one last question, but we'll have an opportunity for people to ask questions personally afterward. I just don't want the formal program to be too long. Yes. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. What a migraine sufferer can do to prevent the onset, and once it starts, what
for migraine?
For migraine.
Okay, so migraine is one of the most treatable diseases of the nervous system. Unfortunately, most of the patients don't seek medical help. So if anyone is suffering from frequent migraines, they can use preventive medications that can prevent those migraines from coming on. Whether they are ocular migraine or otherwise, they can be prevented. Those who still have migraine, there are excellent medications now available. They have now been available. It came out, the first one in 1992. They are available that you can take as a tablet right at the onset of your migraine, and in 30 to 60 minutes, it completely gets rid of the migraine.
Other than medication, what are natural ways somebody should not do or avoid?
So migraine in many patients has triggers, and those triggers, whenever you are exposed to, your body is exposed to them, you start getting a migraine. Everyone's trigger is different, but common triggers are lack of sleep, too much stress, certain foods such as cheese, cured meats because they have nitrates, the MSG, which is commonly used in Chinese food. These are all, alhamdulillah, we don't drink alcohol, but alcohol is a common trigger. There are many other triggers, such as certain perfumes, certain smells. Whenever there are patients who get a migraine predictably every time they are exposed to one specific smell, not every smell. So those triggers, they need to be avoided, and if you can avoid them, you won't get any migraines.
Exactly.
Maybe do you want to take any other questions? If nothing else, maybe if people do have specific questions, they can come up. But I wanted to just appreciate Dr. Huq for the very informative, educational.
Thank you so much.
And taking your time out, and everyone else for coming up and talking. So, jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
What is the difference between